Jane began to lose her fight with the cancer and, after 3 months, became housebound. Sheriff Murdoch asked whether it was possible for Jane to attend the annual county awards ceremony, and she thought she could with help from Alan. She was awarded a commendation for valor for saving Alan that day at the truck stop. At the ceremony's climax, the sheriff remembered Stephen and asked Jane if he could bury her next to him in a plot he envisioned placing future sheriffs and deputies that had distinguished themselves by valor, actions, and ideas that brought honor to themselves and the sheriff's department. Jane could only nod yes. Then after the ceremony she asked whether Alan could be buried next to her. The sheriff smiled. Alan has already earned a place in that garden, and yes, I will arrange for a double headstone for you and Alan. Then she was asked to choose an appropriate casket for herself. That night Jane and Alan made quiet, gentle love. Then, at midnight, she awoke and shook Alan. Darling, I think this is it. Take me to the hospital and call Susan and Vivian, please. Alan jumped up and began to dress. His uniform was the closest thing at hand. Then Alan helped her get dressed. She wanted to wear her uniform. She held on to Alan and whispered to him, "Sweetheart, I want to be buried in my uniform." Alan just nodded, yes. Then, Alan asked, "I understand Susan, but why Vivian?" She told him that she wanted to talk to her before she died. Susan, Vivian, Frank, and Sheriff Murdoch met Alan and Jane at the hospital. The orderlies put her in a wheelchair and took her into the emergency room. Susan examined her, and she was put in a hospital bed, where she signaled the group that she had something to say. Her voice was quiet as she spoke. "This part of my life was the most wonderful dream I have had in my 44 years. You all have been such good friends. And you, Susan, and Amber are the best of the best. John, thank you for letting me be a part of your little department and to be a partner with my husband." She paused to catch her breath, coughed, then continued, "Vivian, you have always been my friend, and sometimes I felt as though I was your surrogate mother. Alan, my partner, my captain, and my husband, I'm going away for a while, but I know you will come to me soon enough." She stopped and wheezed. The cancer had sapped her strength, but she pressed on. "Would you all please leave Alan and Vivian with me for a little while?" The sheriff ushered everyone from the room and closed the door. Jane said, "Vivian, remember I said for you to remember that Alan was my man?" Vi replied, "Yeah. I remember." Jane smiled, "I'm leaving. I want you to take care of my man. Alan, Vivian is very young. You must care for her as you have for the last 2 years, and maybe more. You have my permission to marry Vi if she'll have you." Jane sighed and said, "I love you both. Be happy and remember me." Alan, crying, said, "I'll never forget the amazing police officer who saved my life, twice." And Jane closed her eyes, and the monitor sounded as her vitals flatlined. Vivian and Alan supported each other as they walked out to where everyone else waited. Susan said, "Everyone, let's go to my house and celebrate Jane's graduation." Everyone agreed, except Alan. But Vivian persuaded him to go with them and remember Jane. Frank met the group at the Phillips home. As everyone entered, they found some Danish pastries, apple juice for the kids, and something a little stronger for the adults. Frank poured a little glass of the adult beverage and gave it to Vivian. She smiled and gave it back to her dad, and then she poured herself some apple juice. Everyone took a pastry, a drink, and began to talk about Jane. Everyone asked Alan to tell them the story of how the two of them met. Tears filled Alan's eyes as he began to relate the story. David and Susan became a little uncomfortable because they did feature in Alan's narrative. But he pressed through telling about meeting Jane Douglas on the rim of the dry wash, their tales of woe, and their decision to live. Alan became more animated as he told about their conversation at Denny's and her inviting him to be a part of her revenge. When he told about their making love, the women all blushed but smiled at the picture of Jane and Alan standing naked, pistols in hand, talking to Jane's ex. Then he told about waking up in the middle of the night, waking Jane, and proposing. The rest, as they say, is history. Tears flowing, Alan coughed and then laughed. "She was the most wonderful girl I have ever known, with one exception." He smiled, took Elizabeth in his arms, and cuddled her, putting his arm around Roger. "I still have you too." The 2 kids were eventually sent to bed, leaving the adults, Teresa and Vivian, to clean up. Just as they were finishing up in the kitchen, Amber pulled Alan over to the sofa, and she sat with him. Vivian walked over and sat with Alan on the other side. Amber leaned over and spoke to Vi. "Vivian, have you anything to say?" Vivian replied, "I do. Alan, you have me if you want me." Jane had hoped we would make a family. Frank stood nearby and said, "Alan, Vi is 17, but I give permission for her to marry you. I don't want to pressure you in any way, just know you would have my blessing and support in any case." Alan looked at Amber, and she nodded, "Yes." He put his arm around the girl and said, "Give me a little time." Vi nodded, smiled, kissed Alan on the cheek, and she stood, took her daddy's hand, and left. The sheriff told Alan to take the rest of the week off and take the rest of the month if he needed it. He also said that Alan would work solo until he was needed to train another officer, except when needed as CSI. Alan worked with the sheriff to plan Jane's funeral service. The Reno Police Department was informed of the arrangements, and about 30 officers made plans to attend her service. Later it was revealed that the party from Nevada included 30 Reno police officers, 10 officers from the Washoe County Sheriff's Department, and 6 officers from the Nevada State Patrol. The request to attend the service included requests to speak at the service and donations to Jane's family. It seems that Officer Jane Douglas Smith was a well-respected police officer in the Reno, Nevada district. Sheriff Murdoch arranged the speakers, allowing each 15 minutes. 3 officers from the Reno Police Department, 2 officers from the Washoe County Sheriff's Department, and 1 officer from the Nevada State Patrol would speak at the funeral service. After all the Nevada officers spoke, Sheriff Murdoch asked Alan to speak. Alan stood and spoke. "I was ready to end it all. I had found a dry wash where I thought I would do the deed. As I sat on the bank of the dry wash and contemplated what I was about to do, Jane walked over and sat beside me. We decided to have breakfast and keep on living. I fell hard for this amazing Reno police officer and took her away from the big city to a small, rural county sheriff's department. I love that amazing Reno police officer. Because of her, I want to live like she did. A life full of love, courage, and devotion to those I love." To me, her last words were words of love and anticipation of our future reunion. I thank all of you, especially those who have said so many words of praise and loyalty. I called Sheriff Murdoch and told him about the amazing Reno police officer that saved my life. Later, when I asked him if our sheriff's department could use another officer, he asked whether I was talking about the amazing police officer who saved my life. After that, Jane was usually referred to as that amazing police officer. I assure you that I'll be okay. My heart is so full of Jane Eunice Smith that I will go on for another 60 years, God willing. So again, thank you, all. The sheriff had arranged for the Nevada officers to provide a funeral parade of honor for Jane through Mountain View and the cemetery. Pastor Dan gave the last rites at the graveside, prayed, and turned the service back over to Sheriff Murdoch. The sheriff had arranged for a 21-gun salute to honor Sergeant Jane Eunice Smith. Mountain View deputies removed the flag from Jane's casket, folded it, and gave it to Alan. Once again, Alan thanked those who honored Jane. Weeping, he said, "I pray your funeral will be as much an honor to you as you have honored Sergeant Jane Eunice Smith, but I pray your funeral will be many years in the future. God bless each one of you." Alan walked over and sat on a stone bench nearby and wept. Vivian quietly sat down beside him, hands in her lap. Alan reached over and took her hand in his. He whispered, "Thank you, Vivian. God bless you too." She put her head on his shoulder and simply held him close, not saying a word. When Alan stood, she stood with him, held his hand, and walked with him to the hearse. He signaled for her to get in, then slid in with Roger and Elizabeth. And the 4 rode back to town. The sheriff had arranged for the tea room to host a post-funeral reception, where everyone spent a little time before going home. All the officers from Nevada shook Alan's hand and wished him well. One Nevada State Patrolman stopped. "I remember you, Gunny. You saved my life." "Hey, everyone, Captain Smith is a certified hero, awarded the Medal of Honor." Alan looked over at Susan. "Susan, this is your fault." She smiled. "At least I did something right." Alan took Vivian's hand and started for the door. "Everyone, thank you, and for all you jarheads, Semper Fi." There returned a resounding Semper Fi, the sheriff's voice heard well over all the rest. Alan and Vivian stepped out. He kissed her and asked for a date Friday night, and she said yes. He told her to wear an evening gown, and he would get a tux. He went to Max and Maxine's clothing store and asked about a tux. Max looked him up and down and pulled a black tuxedo out of a closet. "Try this on, Captain." The fit was perfect. Max said that someone had ordered it and refused to pay for it. "Captain, you can have it for $180. Alan paid for the tux. He was ready. Friday evening, 6:30, Alan stopped to pick Vivian up. She was waiting for him in a peach-colored gown that set her feminine charms off to the maximum advantage. Alan was very complimentary of her beauty and grace. He helped her with a warm wrap, led her to his pickup, and drove to the local roadhouse. When they entered, Alan paused by the maitre d'. "I'm Alan Smith. I requested a reservation for table 9. The maitre d' replied, "Of course, Captain Smith," and he signaled a waiter, "Table 9. Seated, the waiter asked about something to drink, to which Alan replied, "Coca-Cola, please." As the waiter left, Vi picked up the menu and remarked, "Alan, this is so expensive." He replied, "This is our first date splurge." "Okay?" She replied, "Well, okay." The waiter returned with 2 Cokes and took their order. He said, "It will be about 40 minutes. Alan stood, held out his hand and asked Vivian to dance. She stood and they walked out on the dance floor, and danced. Vi remarked, "Oh, Alan, you move so smoothly." He told her about Susan teaching him to dance while guarding her and Roger. "We had every evening for about 4 months to practice. I guess she was a good teacher." After about half an hour, they returned to their table to wait on their dinner. Vivian asked, "Alan, why did you ask for this table?" He replied, "It's back here in a corner where I can see the whole room. There's no one behind me, and we're as far from the entrance as we can be. It's just my police training." She answered, "Oh, well, okay. It is close to the stage." About that time the waiter brought their meal and they began to eat. It was about 8:30 when the waiter approached Alan. "Captain, our patrons are being quietly robbed. Would you help us stop this?" Alan asked, "How is this being done?" The waiter replied, "There are 5 of them, all with guns." One of them approaches a table, pulls out his pistol and tells the patrons to empty their wallets and stay quiet or the other 4 men would shoot them. Alan smiled at Vivian, "Stay here, I'll be right back." The 4 men were situated in the center of the dining room, hands in their pockets. Alan casually walked by one of them and accidentally bumped into him. At which time he walked over the man at the table and gave the guy Jane's gentle, loving touch, and he dropped his pistol. Alan snatched the weapon up and pointed it at one of the other men. "Hands up, all 4 of you." Turning to the maitre d', called the sheriff. All 5 of the hold-up men were put in a line of chairs, tied to the chairs and watched over by Alan. Alan spoke loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Captain Smith of the sheriff's office. Your belongings will be returned to you shortly. Please remain calm and enjoy your evening, but do not leave until the deputies I have called say you may leave." Then Alan asked that the waiter bring Vivian over to where he stood guard. Vivian sat next to Alan. The manager walked over to Alan and Vivian, their bill in hand. "Captain, you and your ladies' evening is on the house." Sheriff Murdoch and 2 deputies arrived to take charge of the situation. "Alan, you and Vivian are relieved. Go back to your table and enjoy the rest of your evening." Vivian's eyes were as big as saucers. "Oh, Alan, I'm so proud to be with you. You're so brave, so amazing. Do you think I could be a deputy?" Alan looked at her. "Vi, you can be anything you want to be. After graduation, you could attend the police academy in Henry County if that's what you want." They turned their chairs and watched a second session of the Roadhouse's floor show. 10:30, Alan took Vivian home. She invited him in for a moment. They entered, and Frank got up and went into his bedroom. "Glad you're back home, honey, Alan. Thanks for bringing her home at a decent hour." Vivian sat on the sofa and invited Alan to sit with her. She smiled a rather nervous smile but put her arms around his neck and kissed him, a long, gentle, passionate, and breathless kiss that left them breathing hard. Alan whispered, "Good night, Vi." He showed her his shaking hands. "I had better go. Thank you for dancing with an old man. I hope we can do something another time." She stood up and put her arms around his neck. I do too. Thank you for a nice evening and for allowing me to see your bravery. Good night. She kissed him. Alan stumbled out the door. As he approached his truck, he began to tear up and whispered, Vivian, it would be so easy to care for you, maybe even love you.